Hello, and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in work and in life and simplify them. And friends, we're talking about courage today, which, for some people, they're like, ooh, I don't know. I mean, I know I need more of that in my life, and especially at work. But, that little cringy moment of it all. But I want to break it down in simple, practical ways. How can you lead with courage, especially at work? So my special guest today, her name is Justine Froelker, and she's a licensed professional counselor. She's also an award-winning author and a sought-after speaker with more than 25 years experience in mental health, personal growth, and professional development. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Justine Froelker. Hey, Justine.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Mary.
I am so pleased you're here, and let's just dive right into it. When you say the word courage, what do you actually mean?
For me, courage comes back to the root word meaning, which is to tell your story. To tell your story with your whole heart. And for me, I added on that piece of, and it's probably my therapist background for sure. I want to help people learn how to live and love and lead from that courage, like to tell your story from that courage, and like how, what are the skills, the tools, the language. And I think a lot of people will say, courage, feel the fear and do it anyways. I mean, some people will say fear less. And of course, then I'm going to come back with my therapist things and be like, let's feel our feelings, and not be owned by them and defined by them. Let's feel them well. And so really, like, courage for me it comes back down to like being who you are, who you were created to be, who you want to be in every space that you exist in. And what's that look like in every space, especially the different spaces.
It's so interesting that you should say this, because we had on the podcast a few months ago, Claude Silver with VaynerX, and she wrote a book about being a heart-centered workplace and a heart-centered leader. And that was all about this, like telling your story with your whole heart. Yep. But the truth behind that, sometimes for a lot of people that are listening, they're like, I don't really want to show my real whole self at work, because what if they don't like it? What if I'm too much? What would you say to people like that?
Well, I do think that there's a piece of, we think we're a work person and then a home person, and that's exhausting. and you're just not. Like, the research doesn't really point to that. It doesn't, at least not as sustainable. Some of us are terrible compartmentalizers. I mean, sure, some of us are good at it, but it's also been because it's a coping skill of how we've survived, right? To compartmentalize into that work self and the home self. You're one person. What's it look like? What's it take? What are the practices to be integrated and wholehearted, that one person at home and at work? Now, and I always use this example in my engagements, but so I'm a professional speaker. When I'm trying to hold an audience for, especially if I have a 4-hour workshop or something like that, I don't come home to the dinner table and talk at my husband the way I do from a stage to a large audience. Like, still me though, right? I just pull from different parts of my personality. It's not that I'm a completely different person. I also think for a lot of people that when they think about okay, you want me to be courageous, authentic, read vulnerable at work, they don't realize that vulnerability has boundaries. Always. Vulnerability, being authentic, does not mean that I am sharing my deepest, darkest secrets with everybody. That is not appropriate, nor is it safe, especially at work. And I want you sharing your authentic self, who you are. My saying is I share from a scar and never, ever a wound. Because when you are sharing from your wounds, you end up bleeding out on people. And especially when you are in leadership and you have power over other people, that is not okay. Because you end up working out your stuff on other people. And so what's it look like to do that work? To be authentic and vulnerable and boundaried at the exact same time. Those two things can be true at the same time.
And I wonder if it's a slow simmer over time, right? I mean, I think back to your point, you share what's appropriate in the workplace. You don't just sort of, word vomit it all out in the first team meeting together. Hey, I work here now, and let me tell you my whole backstory.
Correct.
don't think that would work well. I mean, we all have kind of discernment on that, but it's a slow simmer of being open and being honest and kind of owning up to a mistake here and there and going, oh, and then you become that role model for others to go, oh, okay, this is a safe space for us to, not be the perfect version of us.
Right.
Speak into that.
Yeah. And it layers on top of each other. In order to be vulnerable with you, to show up as me, I have to trust you at least a little bit. I may not trust you a whole lot. I have to trust you a tiny, tiny bit though, to be a little bit vulnerable. And then when you hold that space for me, when I learn that I can trust you with my vulnerability, I'm going to be even more vulnerable, which then builds the trust. Now, when we screw it up, which we always will, because we are messy human beings in a broken world, we will break people's trust. They will break ours. And so when you break my trust, I take back that vulnerability, and then it's up to both of us to repair the trust. And so vulnerability and trust I always say they're in an intimate, symbiotic dance. They work together and come back and forth. I'm not dropping my deepest, darkest secrets on people that I've just met. Now, we do that. And a lot of times we do it because we're just trying to hotwire a connection. We're like, oh my gosh, she's kind of cool. And having friends as an adult is kind of hard. And all of a sudden, right, you're spilling this, and then somebody's on the other side and they're like, I did not want to know that. Oh my gosh. And now I can't unknow it, especially at work. I hear this all the time. It's not necessarily our jobs that are the hardest things. They're hard, especially right now. It's the people issues. Or I have leaders saying I am just receiving everyone's stuff, and they share too much, and I didn't want to know it. I don't want to know it, and now I can't unknow it. And what am I supposed to do with it? And I don't feel equipped, right? And so then it's the people stuff that's really, really hard. And so that's where we come back to vulnerability always has boundaries. The most intimate details of my life are shared with a really small group of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
The older I get, the smaller the group.
And I mean, I think that this has probably been always true, but it feels especially now in this day and age that the macro of reality, the socioeconomic world that we are in, the news every single day, it feels very much like a pressure cooker that is getting more and more intense, and sometimes more and more out of our ability to control or make positive change in. But then you think about the micro, which is the organization you work in, right? The place you go and sometimes spend more time with these people than you do with the family and friends at home. And this is where I really want to dive in. So people that are listening that are people managers, what does it mean to be a courage-centered leader at work? How does that work?
Yeah, for me, it comes back to you got to know yourself really well. Who are you? What are your values? How do you lead from those values? How do those values show up in behavior? We're going to have hard conversations using curious language. We're going to practice empathy and hold people accountable. Because that is what builds trust. And so that courage-centered, you can't give what you don't have. And so it really, so much of this comes back to our own self-awareness and our own work. I think a lot of times we'll hear things like, to lead others, you have to lead yourself. Yes. And this is not necessarily another strategy. It's who are you? And how do you show up in those spaces? And how do you turn toward yourself first? Because that's the only way you're going to turn toward one another. And if we're not turning toward one another, I don't know how we get through any of this.
Yeah.
Plus it's way more painful.
I wonder also, they say that terrible bosses make for terrible jobs, right? So, and sometimes I think terrible bosses have also learned how to be that way because they've had terrible bosses.
100%.
Their role models throughout their professional journey has just been someone who leads with fear or power or control rather than this space of courage and empathy and emotional intelligence. So how do you even encourage somebody to be something that they've never even seen with their own eyes or experienced before?
Well, it is kind of this, it's almost a paradox because your strongest tool in the toolbox is to model the work. That is your strongest tool as a parent and as a leader, right? And so we will see that. So not so great leadership is often born of never having a great leader. And though what's also true is a lot of people that come into my trainings and things like that, they are fighting to be a good leader because they never want to be the leader that they've had. Like that awful leader that they had that did quite a bit of damage that they have had to work on healing. They know what they don't want to do, right? Except they don't necessarily know like, what do I replace it with? Is there another way? Right. Yeah. And so it is that piece of what's it look like to have power with people, to communicate clearly, to hold on to our curiosity and our humanity, to actually talk about trust, to say the things that need to be said in the moment, not 3 weeks later when I can't change it or when resentment has built up, to have boundaries. Healthy boundaries, not boundaries used as a weapon, because we're seeing that a lot right now. There's a lot of things being weaponized that were never meant to be weaponized.
And tell me more there. Like, what would that look like?
There's, I've had some people be like, she literally, like when I hold her accountable to what's literally in her job description. She's like, well, I'm not going to do that. That's just my boundary. And I was like, well, that's not a boundary. Like, that literally by definition, not a boundary, right? Like, and that's where we come back to, well, actually, like this is in your job description. And this is what we need from you. This is what I expect from you. Help me understand what's in the way of meeting this. How can I support you? Like, what does support look like in meeting this expectation? And this is the hardest part. Here's what happens if you don't meet this expectation. And we're clear about it. And whether or not that looks like a PIP or we pull in extra support, whatever it looks like, right? Like, but we say that out loud. And because accountability is not bad. Like there's constant depth, like this wrestle of if we are holding people accountable without empathy, that's just cruel. If we're practicing empathy with no accountability, I mean, that's denial. That's enabling. That's letting things go it only erodes trust. I cannot tell you how many times I'm like, I actually just did a video about it. Like you said yes when you really needed to say no. And then you get all judgy and resentful and maybe angry, except the wildest part is we get resentful against the person who asked us rather against the person who's at fault for actually saying yes when we needed to say no. It's us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it erodes the trust. Yeah.
And I find that the ones that maybe have not had great role models of good bosses, courageous bosses, right? The pattern is like, I'm just trying to keep the peace here. I'm just trying to avoid conflict. I'm just trying to seem like I got my stuff together, kind of performing confidence, but on the outside. But the reality is sometimes these people are crumbling and they just don't know a better way. Yeah. So how do we build a courage-centered culture at work that's not just the people leader is doing that, but everybody?
Yeah. It's going to embed a lot quicker and faster when it starts from the top. Right. Always. And there are definitely organizations that I work with that I have to convince them of that, right? Like, or fight for that. It's often like, well, it's our managers that need the help, right? And then I get to say like, okay, how are your managers report to you? Yeah. Right. Like, and how are you going to support them? Like they have this training or they have this language or this new self-awareness and they want to wrestle it out with you, except you haven't done the work yourself. Like it embeds a lot quicker and a lot faster and deeper when it's coming from the top. Especially when you're in it with them, I always come back to, I will always come back to values. I think values of our organization, what are they? What do they actually mean? Does everybody agree on what they mean? And most importantly, how do they show up in behavior? Because if we haven't defined what that is, then it's impossible to hold people accountable to those values. And it's also not just the values of the organization, it's the values of each person. How do their values fit in within the values? How do they show up? Are there any places that we butt heads? Like, how do we wrestle those situations out? Because if we don't have the clarity of values, like we're not deeply rooted. It's going to be really hard to be rooted in our mission and our values. And that is really, really exhausting because we don't have a clear path forward. And so like for me, courage-centered organizations, teams, people we start with values. And so, and it really comes back really to the all the self-awareness stuff. So we values, that self-awareness piece, and then the authenticity piece, and then we start dealing with all the people stuff.
It's so true. I mean, the quickest way to get disengaged employees is to put fancy core values and guiding principles up on the wall in the conference room that no one follows. And also no one follows, but no one understands or even, could memorize them,
Yes.
It has to be your senior executives that live, walk, breathe, talk, everything, those values, and not just a one-off big splashy event, but it has to be every single day, micro moments. And you're right, that trickles down. I have seen organizations where maybe the senior executives are doing it, but then they allow their middle managers to, kind of do whatever. And then they say, well, they'll just figure it out. They're adults, right? And there's not any coaching or mentoring to course correct. And so then that poisons the well.
Absolutely.
And so then it becomes a systemic issue over and over and over again. And you will lose your top talent because why would they want to work there?
You do. Yep. And there's one of the other things I'm seeing in that piece, and it's eroding the trust. It's directly tied to values. It's also tied to like what you talked about, like the pressure of the world, like all the information that we have access to, everything that's happening. Like it's become really transactional. And we weren't made to be transactional. That's not how we are made. We are made for connection. We're made for teamwork. We really, really are. Like, even if you are the most introverted person ever, you need people, you need connection. And so one of the things I'm hearing a lot is like, we know we've had a great culture, and especially last 6 years, it's eroded. And like, it's easy to blame COVID, except we don't want to, right? And we just need help getting it back. And it's like, so trying to explain, like, what's it look like to make it, it's just become transactional. Part of that is because people they're exhausted. They're burnt out. Like, they never rest. When they're not at work, their lives are very, very full. Plus they have computers that they hold in their hands that they have access to every story, every opinion about everything. And it's constant, and very few people are actually taking good care of themselves. And so when they come to work for their required hours, they feel like they have nothing left to give. So it has to be transactional because it's the only way that I can survive. What would it look like, though, to create that culture where they actually come to not only do their job well, because that's why you hired them, but they feel filled up. Like, they feel seen and like they mattered because you know them and you know their values, and you've created a space where like you brought them in for them to add to the culture. Now, will you always have people on the team that like, and it's probably like the 80-20 rule. You'll have the 20% of people like, yeah, it's a job. I'm not gonna help you add to the courageous culture. You better make sure that 20% though doesn't damage the courageous culture, and that you got your 80% who do add and build up that culture. We won't always get everybody. For some people, it's going to be transactional. What's it look like, though, to make sure that they're not doing damage to what we're building up?
So what would be some small practical behaviors that, or even action items that could begin to shift the culture to be more courage-centered? What would you recommend for us?
There's a lot to be said for gathering. Even if you're remote, it's fine. You still need to gather. And not just for your meeting, not just to get to the agenda. What's it look like to make the time to create intentional connection with your people? And it doesn't have to be something big, expensive, or takes a ton of time. Like, one of the things that I love to do, whether or not it's at a virtual event or it's just a daily huddle or a meeting, like we do what I call intentional courage check-ins. So like, I have a courage deck that sometimes we use, or I have like a series of questions that I like to use. And so one of my favorite questions, there's two versions of it. What are you excited about? What are you worried about? Or what's on your mind and what's on your heart? Those are from the Gottmans. They're like the famous marriage counselors. And so but everybody in the meeting goes around and answers those two questions. What are you excited about? What are you worried about? Or what's on your mind? What's on your heart? Because you get a pulse of the room, and they'll tell you kind of like the tangible things, like what's on their plate for that day, like what's on their to-do list, but what's on their heart they'll tell you that like, well, our 14-year-old dog is really struggling and we're going to have to make that decision soon. And I don't know how I'm going to survive it. Or my mom was just diagnosed with cancer, right? Like that's when they reveal their humanity to the team and you get a pulse of where everybody's at. And I know you don't have time for this. I know that, except I believe that you cannot afford to not make the time. And so one of the examples that I use, like I had a full training a couple months ago. I had 29 people. And every day we do some version of this check-in. And it's a quick check-in. Sometimes, of course, you're always going to have that talker that you got to kind of contain a little bit, but like usually people really respect that. I had 29 people answer that question. What's on your mind? What's on your heart? It took 15 minutes, 29 people. Make the time.
Yeah.
Like it's such an easy, tangible way. Because when people feel connected and they feel seen and valued, they work harder for you, they create and innovate, and frankly, you keep good talent.
Right. And you reduce friction, which is
Yes.
exhausting. So much emotional bandwidth gets lost by you, the manager, or by the team when there is this unspoken friction happening. You know, I have a firm belief, and, you know, I feel like I'm going to be preaching to the choir here when I say it, but I have a firm belief that if you are a people manager, you lead a team, no matter if it's one person or 100 people, your primary role is to remove roadblocks, advocate for them when they're not in the room, and help them, equip them to do the very best work of their life. That's it. Literally, that's it. Yes, you have to hit revenue targets, but guess what? Your team is the machine that's actually doing that. You are there to equip and empower people to do the very best work of their lives. And so that's where I think about this and you go, oh, wait, actually, let's test this. Let's test if we did a courage check-in at our next team meeting for 30 days and see if that changes the energy of this team. That reduces the friction even by 1% is progress. You are doing your core job, right?
Right. Because I haven't walked into a room in a while, but like, people really are not okay right now.
They're not at all.
They're not okay. And that oozes and bleeds and like, and on top of like so many people not being okay, we've also cut the budget of pouring into those people. I get it. And I cared well for people don't bleed all over everybody, right? They don't have something fly out of their mouth in a tone that like they can't take back, that they didn't mean, that literally breaks a ton of trust. They make less mistakes that cost you money.
Right. And
like,
that brings me back to, you know, like the 5 love languages that's been adapted to the workplace, the 5 languages of appreciation at work, Dr. Paul White. You know, when you really stop, slow down the pace, which sometimes feels very dizzying and you're on this roller coaster that you can't control, but actually you can. You slow down and you go, wait, how do I show appreciation to this person in the language that they actually want to receive it? Words of affirmation, quality time, you know, all the things, and again, put all the links in the show notes. So if you're on the treadmill or driving in a car right now, don't worry, we got you. Go over to thesimplifiers.com and you'll find all these things. But I mean, I think it is being intentional with that. And so I want to ask you about the 5 pathways that you have and the 5 pathways specifically to a courageous life. Can you walk us through that? Specifically how that would work in the workplace?
Yeah. So my curriculum, Courage, is built here. It's been a long time of working with people just to help them be a little bit better, happier, and healthier. Definitely more courageous. And so my curriculum is 5 pathways. So pathway 1 is feel it all, how to feel our feelings and not be our feelings. And so it's twofold. We begin with values, like we already talked about, because you can't feel well without clarity of values. So we start there. And then, of course, yes, we talk about feelings and emotional regulation, because if you haven't noticed, people aren't super emotionally regulated.
No.
And it's doing significant damage to our health, to our team cultures, to how we lead, to how we work, to our families. Like it all blends together. And so that's pathway 1. Pathway 2 is one that like, it's usually a quick step, but I call it embody again, how to take care of ourselves. Because the longer I've been bringing these skills to the workplace, the more I realized hardly anyone knows how to care well for themselves. And like, even when I was in private practice as a therapist, and, by the time someone comes to therapy, they needed to probably come to therapy years ago, right? They've waited till it was really bad. So like the list of things to process is long, and you've got 45 to 50 minutes weekly if you're lucky. Sometimes it's monthly, right? And so I would say like so much of what we would do early on in working together is like, we would work on your sleep. We would work on your food, on your movement, on how you have awe and wonder and delight, your morning and nighttime routines. We would work on those things because like everything actually does get a little bit better when you get good sleep, right? And you have the wherewithal to actually tackle some of those things. And so the longer I'd been in the workplace and like helping people, especially leaders, you cannot give what you do not have. You will hit a wall. Whether or not you're going to be one of the health diagnoses that we see, we have to talk about why 70% of women have autoimmune disorder. We have to talk about it. Like, and very few are feeling their feelings well or taking care of themselves, especially women leaders. We give and give and give. We have to talk about those pieces. And so like, what's it look like to really care well for you? And body, again, to come back in this body, because at this point, you really don't ever have to be in it. Not with technology. So that's pathway 2. And it's usually one of those big things that people like, because I always joke with people like, I've probably gone down the rabbit hole. So like I can share some weird things that you could try, and like, why not try? Like, and get your life back a little bit, but because the wall will include your health or your relationships usually, and you'll hit it. And it's just kind of like a matter of time of when. Unfortunately.
1,000%. I mean, unfortunately, I've experienced that myself. Like when things get really busy and crazy and just, and you let the physical stuff slip, and that slip becomes pretty massive over time, right? And food, exercise, sleep, getting outdoors, not sitting at a desk for 8 hours and hunched over a computer. All of these things contribute to your physical health, which then can affect your mental health, 100%. Which affects everything else.
Everything.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Yeah.
So so that's 2. So then pathway 3 is be fully you, how to show up authentically. So that is the vulnerability piece. It is how to show up in every space that you exist in as all of who you are. And for me, that even includes the spaces that maybe aren't the bravest or the safest. And that's for some people, for some of us more than others, that's a bigger risk, right? For sure. And at the same time, I don't want you to not be you. I want you to maybe walk into those spaces that are not quite so brave or safe for you with boundaries. You're still you though, right? You don't perform or mask or armor up or hustle. Like you're still you. You just may not, like they may not get the inner workings all the way, right? Like you pick and choose how much they get to see, but not from this place of like self-protection, because that allows them to steal your courage from you.
Yeah.
So, and then we walk into the biggest chunk probably really of the whole curriculum is pathway 4. So I called pathway 4, love others well, how to relate with, live with, how to relate to, live with, and lead others well. And I always tell people, especially in my corporate spaces, like if the word love is too squishy for you, especially when it comes to work, it's fine. Just shift it to care, dignity, and respect. It's how do we hold on to our humanity? Because we're going to turn toward one another. And like for me, one of my values is love. Like I love people. We are really hard, but dang, we're awesome. And like, I want to hold on to my humanity. And so within this skill set the big one is operationalizing trust, We also talk about shame resilience and how shame shows up in ourselves, how we react from it, how it shows up in all of our relationships. We talk about empathy and, of course, accountability, because they are not mutually exclusive. We practice courageous conversations and learn curious language. And, of course, we talk about feedback. So it's all kind of those like the peopling skills. And then the last pathway is pathway 5, which I call do the work. And that is how to live courageously. And really it's all of it together, because it layers on top, it builds on top of one another. And it's really, truly about reclaiming those old stories, especially the old narratives, the old beliefs that you live from that are not of service to you or anyone else. And so we restory those to restore you.
I really appreciate this framework because it's so perfect and simple to, kind of wrap your arms around. But I want to clarify, this is not a checklist, right? I'm not doing this one and done and like, all right, I'm healed.
Yeah.
I'm a courageous person.
The work
forever.
is never done. It's never done.
So I just saying the silly thing out loud, but like it's a practice, just the same as if you were doing yoga or strength training or whatever, right? There may be places where you need to go back and embody again, or really go back and assess, am I doing the work, So speak more into that.
Yeah. There's I always tell people, like, this is an invitation to a different way of living and leading. And I can't make you do it. I can't make your organization do it. I can teach you the skills, the tools, the language. I can, most of all, model it for you. I can't make you. Whether or not you accept that invitation is up to you. And not everyone's going to do it. And yes, some people will really screw it up. That's also part of the process. Some people will also weaponize it. That's also part of the process. And so there's also that piece, though, too, is like we have seasons. And so you'll have seasons where like you're killing it on one pathway. Like you're doing great. And that might mean that some of the other pathways fall to the wayside. Like I have a pre-work and a post-work assessment that I send to people when they do the full training. I had a woman, she was like, okay, so I was like, I got my post-work and I was like, oh, I really thought I'd go up. Like she goes, and I actually stayed the same, if not went down on 4 of the 5. And she goes, but then I remembered when I left those 3 days with you, I committed to myself. I focused on the one that I had the most room to grow in. And she goes, and I've been focused on it. And she goes, I think it's been at the cost of some of the others. How does that work? I was like, it absolutely could be, right? Like, and it's the whole point of the practice and the growth and the healing is that it's not at the cost of the others. They're going to always ebb and flow in the different seasons of your life because adulting is hard.
Yeah. And your priorities and what shifts, it changes, day to day, week to week, month to month. You may be caring for aging parents and have toddlers at home and you're being pulled in so many directions and have these insane revenue targets at work. So I think this is where I hear in the work that you do, empathy and grace, because I think that's what sometimes makes a lot of us type A overachievers, high performers, we get tagged at work, crack a bit at the seams because we are being pulled in so many ways and we're trying to do everything perfect, air quotes, which is impossible. Yeah. So there's something you said earlier and I really want to make sure we hit it. How do we, Justine, stop avoiding the conversations that actually matter? Because I think so many people, and especially leaders, know what needs to be said, but then they delay it or soften it too much, or, worse, they avoid it completely. How do we stop avoiding those kinds of conversations?
So my quote is, the unspoken is never benign. It will eat you from the inside out. You have to say it out loud. You have to have that hard conversation. I think the toughest part is we can't have those hard conversations when we're all up in our feelings and our thinking brain is not firing because like emotions are super high, right? Get your stuff together, right? Like get your brain back online, take those deep breaths, move your body, write some stuff down. Pull out the list of curious language to have right in front of you. That's totally okay. It's also okay to write a script, right? Like it's those things, like prepare. you're having that hard conversation though within a day, not 3 weeks later, right? Like there's that, we hold on to the resentment and we rehearse and we avoid for weeks, and then we try to have the conversation, and sometimes people are like, I don't even know what you're referring to. That was like 3 weeks. Like, I don't remember that. Do you know how much life I've lived in 3 weeks? And I wish you would have said it then so I could have made it right. Like, so there's that part, but also like how much have we eroded between us because we didn't say what we needed to say in the moment. And because also what's happening in those like 3 weeks, let's say, like you're avoiding that conversation with me. I can feel it. I may not be able to name it. It does change like the vibe between us, like the way you treat me, and I can feel something's up. And so somebody has to grab their courage eventually and be like, "What's going?" Like I feel like something's up. And I've even like walked leaders through like when you say like I kind of feel like something's going on, and this is how come I see that. Like this is kind of the evidence. It's not like that you've been keeping track or a scorecard, but it's the evidence, because a lot of times people will be like, "Oh no, I'm fine." You're saying fine. I don't feel fine from you. And I really want to figure out, like, I want to work together. I want to move forward. I want to figure out how to make this work. And so it comes back to like, how do we care well for our fellow humans, even if maybe like they're not your favorite person?
Yeah.
Okay. They don't need to be your best friend. You can still have dignity and respect for other people, right? And also like having these hard conversations also helps when you are aware of your values and their values.
Yeah. And ultimately what the end goal we're trying to achieve, whether it is the task at hand or just simply reducing the friction and the emotional bandwidth that is being exhausted from the friction that's there. It makes me think of another speaker that I know, Matthew Blades. He does Air Check Your Life. He's all about like the conversation that you're avoiding is costing you trust and performance and ultimately revenue, right? So if you are a people leader and you're having these like friction moments and you're going, oh, I don't want to have this conversation, it will come back on you very, very quickly if you don't resolve it, because that's your job.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so often I will tell people like, what would it be like just to name it at the beginning? Like this, I've actually been dreading this conversation, and my brain, because it likes to stay comfortable, tells me that like it'd be easier not to have it, except I know that that's not true. And that's not aligned with my values because of these things. And I know your values are these, so I know it's not aligned with yours because you actually want to do your best here. And we brought you on to like be you, your talents, your gifts, your resources. And so this might be a hard conversation and I feel awkward. And because of that, I wrote some notes. Or like I have this like list of curious language to try to keep me on track, right? Like, and I'm wondering if you can have grace with me while we have this tough conversation, and then we allow that grace to them too. Like if they shut down or they blow up and get angry, we got to name that and say like, okay, like I feel like I just lost you, and I really need you to hear this feedback. Yeah, let's take a break. And we're going to come back, though, to this. Because one of the big things I'm hearing a lot, too, one of the most popular workshops at this point is the generational issues in the workplace. I mean, we have 5 generations in the workplace, and it's not a difference of people. It's a difference of values and definitions, really. That's it. And we just got to talk about it, because also when we're not talking about it, we're just making up stories about people. And so one of the things I'm hearing a lot, especially the younger generation, like, well, what if they just shut down every single time I try to have that hard conversation? And my response is, we have to name that. And we have to say, like, you are struggling with this. And so like, and you cannot grow when you are in shutdown. You're not only not hearing the feedback that you need, but you're not going to be able to improve. And so we're like, maybe they need to go see the EAP, a counselor, right? Like maybe they need an executive coach. Maybe they need a third person in those conversations because they're struggling for whatever reason to hear it from you, right? Like how can we get creative about what would it help this? What would help with this shutdown? And at the end of the day, though, it comes back down to this cannot keep happening because we need you to make these changes. And here's what happens if they don't happen.
Yes. Man, Justine, the work you do is incredible. If you guys are curious about the work she's up to, she's got a book called Courage is Built Here. And there's also a supplemental courage deck. We were talking about that earlier when you have prompts and check-ins and running team meetings. And I know you do workshops all over. So we will put all of those links in the show notes. Again, you can go over to thesimplifiers.com, or you can head over to her website directly at JustineFroelker.com or Monarch Meadow Retreat. Tell me more about that.
Oh, goodness. My husband and I, we're building a corporate retreat space here in St. Louis, Missouri. So we are so close to finishing and yet feel so far away. It's a pretty big project. So we have training space and also some conference rooms that people can rent. And we also will be able to sleep 7 to 9 people. So like for teams to come do their corporate offsites or people to host retreats. And it is on 6 acres in the middle of St. Louis and has wildflowers everywhere and is very different, most likely from the conference room you're meeting in right now, because pretty much everything is white, black, and gray, and this is not.
Amazing.
It's vintage. Like it's funky.
Love it. And sometimes you need to get out of your boring old meeting room and get to a different perspective, a different scenery to be able to change minds. So again, all the links are going to be found in the show notes over at thesimplifiers.com. And I want to mention one more thing. So you have this thing called the Courage Circle. It meets every second and fourth Wednesday at the lunch hour, like right around 12:30 Central Time. Tell me more about what that is.
So it was something that like I tried to get creative of how to serve my community and people who just wanted like an inkling of this work. And so we log on to a Zoom link and we're never on there for more than 30 minutes. Sometimes 2 people shows up, sometimes more than that show up. And I pull a card from my courage deck. I read the card, I do a mini teach on it, and then we just open it up for conversation. So like this week's card it was literally like, no, I don't want to. No, I can't. No, my plate is as full as I want it. No, like no is a complete sentence. And we had an administrative assistant to attorneys of 41 years. We had a talent and development person on the call. And then we had a speaker on the call. And it was just like, the conversation was so great. Like we all are in it in different ways. I think that's one of the most powerful things about the work that I get to do is that it helps people know that like, oh, you too? Dang, I thought I was just me, right? And it's like, no, we're in this together.
I love that concept. I mean, also micro bites of learning like that. That's our fellow friend, Ryan McRae. Like this is everything. Sometimes it's just the micro moments, a check-in point where we go, oh, you too? Oh, this is a tiny thing I can test and iterate this week and see if it delivers results. I love it. Well, as we wrap up, Justine, I'm so grateful to have you here. We have a lightning round of questions we ask everybody on the podcast. So here they go. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
First off, what's one book or blog you're reading these days that's inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
So I'm an avid reader, so I'm always reading like 5 books at a time. But the first thing that popped in my head, I love Adam Clear's Thursday email. What is it? 3, 2, 1, right? Like 3 quotes. Then it's 2 quotes from other people and then a question. It's brilliant. I love that it's his voice, but then also he brings in other voices. I look forward to that email every week.
Love it. Yeah. We'll link up that newsletter so people can check that out. It's totally free. So highly recommend over at thesimplifiers.com. So tell me, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally that is up to brilliant things? If we could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast. Who would that be?
My friend Rhoda Banks, she's in talent development, HR, things like that. And she has her own podcast too. Her and my other friend Shannon are putting on a women's retreat here in October in St. Louis. And Rhoda is just one of those people that she exudes sunshine joy while also like hitting you upside the head with what you probably need to hear. All alive in one person. And I was just on her podcast. She was just on my podcast. And I'm a better person whenever I get to engage with her.
Oh, I love people like that. We will link her in the show notes as well if you guys are curious about what Rhoda's doing out there. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what are you grateful for today?
I am great. I'm grateful for my morning walks. Like now I'm taking two. I take one by myself, no phone, no dogs, no music, no podcast, just a walk. Usually to the sunrise. And it is, I love those days. And then it's super hot here in St. Louis. And so we've had to move the dog walk to the morning. So I'm also really grateful for that, even though at first it was a real big pain to change my schedule, right? And it takes a bit to get it to settle in. And I'm super grateful for it, right? You get it out of the way, but it's also, I don't know, it's just a moment to recalibrate and kind of play with those routines, because sometimes that's really helpful.
Mm-hmm. I love it. So my last question for you today is this. And again, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
Someone somewhere is listening to you and I right now, and they are a people leader and they are wanting to lead with courage. And they're equally overloaded with 80 billion things on their plate, responsibilities, and feeling like they're being pulled in 80 different directions as well. What's one thing you could say and whisper into their ear just to encourage them in this moment?
You can't give what you don't have. Show up and care well for yourself first, because it helps you hold on to your grace and your curiosity and your humanity towards other people. And most of all, though, you're worthy and you deserve the care.
Yeah. And it's okay to ask for help.
Yes. Oh my gosh, always.
Justine, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Such a great conversation.
You're welcome.